Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. We got Dean Karnazes back with us here for a second time. We are talking about his book, A Runner's High, My Life in Motion. And I reached out to Dean when I saw the book came out. I asked him if he would come on, and of course, here he is. So I had an opportunity to read the book and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thanks for coming back, Dean. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to be back on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about where did the book come from? Obviously I've read basically, I think I've read all your books up until this point, and I've loved every one of them. I'm a little bit of a runner, so we have that in common, and that helps, I think, when you're reading your books. But where did the prompting come for this book? It'd been a little bit yet since the last one. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's well, I've written 5 books, and I think 5 books in maybe 15 years. So maybe every three years.
Every 3.
Yeah. But my first book, Ultramarathon, man, was kind of a coming of age book, like learning about these crazy long ultra marathons, and learning that a human can indeed run 100 miles nonstop.
Yeah.
And this most recent book is about a guy who's been doing it now for a couple decades, and how I've stayed in the game, how I've really looked to stay in the game forever. My finish line, I like to say, is a pine box.
Yeah, right.
Talking about some of the challenges of getting of an older athlete.
Yeah.
As well as I wanted to be a propulsive read. Like I wanted the reader to have a little bit of literary pleasure
Mm-hmm.
in the writing itself. So it's kind of an immersive book. Like I try to put you right where the action is, and so that it's just you just turn the pages and you kind of forget about the world for a bit, because Lord knows the world is in a funny place right now.
Yeah, it is, and good timing for that. That's for sure. When did you start the project? Because obviously hopefully it feels like we're starting to come out a little bit of the COVID pandemic that we've all been going through since early 2020. Was this a project that kind of popped up during that time? I know a lot of races were canceled. You talk about that even in your book, and how you continued on your journey and what you're doing. Did you have a little bit of extra time throughout this last year and a half to work on this, or was this a project that you had started before that?
Yeah, it was pretty much started before that.
Okay.
The final chapter, as you said, is about a race I was supposed to do that was canceled, but I still went and did it just by myself, like as a virtual race.
Yeah.
And so that was about a year ago.
Yeah.
That was in May of 2020. So I do touch on the pandemic, and it's funny to read that chapter, because in a lot of ways we're further along, but we're still not as we're still not doing a lot of racing as runners or endurance athletes. Like a lot of races have not come back online.
Right. I'm running a race in Alaska, the Denali 135 in June, well, just next month, and that was one of those that got canceled last year. And even this year, up until recently, he was waiting for a certain amount of runners, I think, to really commit to doing it. And when I thought, what's no big problem, we should be able to do this. It seems like there was still a number of racers that just aren't comfortable, I guess, getting back out there, which is interesting to me a little bit. So.
Yeah, I think it depends on, what state you're in. I mean, Alaska seems to be welcoming tourists, and I've got both my vaccination shots, so I'm fully vaccinated. But in California, we're still shut down pretty much. I mean, we're not. We're supposed to open, I think, on June 15th, but we're still nowhere out of the woods.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. What inside your book you talk a lot about your family, which I really thought was interesting. The relationship with your wife, and of course, I believe, do you have a daughter as well?
Yeah, I have a daughter and a son. Yep.
Son, and you definitely highlight the journey with your son a little bit in the book, which I think is really cool, because I think about some of the races I've done, and or some of the things I've done, and haven't done nearly as much as you have over the years, but it is kind of a lonely journey for me inside of my family, because they don't really talk to me about it. They don't really ask me a lot of questions about it, and they're really not interested in it. It's not that they don't support me, but and it does sound like you've had a lot of support in your life from your family, and you know, a few of the chapters, of course, going back to Western States, it involves your son helping you and supporting you through that, which was interesting to read through that, because I also have kids that are 13, 11, and 8 now, and so I'm kind of, your kids are a bit ahead of mine, but I'm just kind of seeing that journey from a father's perspective as well. And it's just always interesting to me, because to do what you do, to run for a living and to run long distances, it requires a lot of time, which also is a bit of a sacrifice, of course, away from those that you care about the most as well. So that dynamic that you talked about, and how you guys handle it and deal with it, and the fact that you're pretty open about it, I thought was very interesting, and appreciated that.
Yeah, there's a saying, you know, in school you get the lesson and then you take the test.
Yeah, right.
In parenting, you take the test and then you get the lesson.
Exactly. Yeah,
So, you know, I don't think anyone can be a runner in isolation. I
yeah,
mean, you know, you and my family sound a little bit similar. I mean, my kids and my wife are certainly, you know, they're familiar with what I'm doing,
yeah.
but they're not totally immersed in it. I mean, I know other couples and other families where, you know, the wife is there, you know, she might be an ultramarathoner as well, and the kids might have dabbled in racing, and they're at every race, and it's kind of a lifestyle thing.
Yeah,
For me, it's kind of like you, like I go to these races by myself
yeah,
most of the time, and it's kind of an, you know, isolated experience.
yeah,
And you also know that you're training a lot. Like, you know, you've got a lot of you're running a marathon every day with the kids at that age,
yeah,
and you know you're sacrificing a lot of things to fit your training in, and hopefully you're not sacrificing your kids too much, you know.
yeah, absolutely. You know, talk about you know, championship leadership. So the leadership from the perspective for you of being on this journey, and from the time you came in, kind of making a name for yourself, really helping to grow the sport. And I know you talk about how it's a little bit maybe uncomfortable. It sounds like sometimes your dad even, you know, calling you the ultra marathon man, and how that embarrasses you a little bit, which I thought, I cracked up a little bit and thought that was funny, that and you explaining the relationship with your parents as well throughout this book was awesome as well. But I also picked up on, you know, you're getting a little bit older, right? Time continues to move on, and new people are coming into the sport, of course, as is always going to happen. You're continuing, like the only finish line you said right away in the beginning being the pine box, but what does that feel like? Because there's a lot of people yelling out your name, you know, like at the Western States, you could barely know your own name at the point, in certain points of this race. People are asking you to take pictures, and just how much have you been able to really embrace that role that you have as a leader of the sport, and how much, and how difficult is it at the same time to continue to carry that torch?
Yeah, I mean, these are good questions, and you know, if you look at other sports, it's unheard of for an athlete, you know, to still be competing in their 50s. Can you imagine like a basketball player or, you know, football player in their 50s?
Yeah, exactly. Although Tom Brady might test that one here pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. And so, you know, one, maintaining my physical fitness, which, you know, is getting harder and harder. I mean, I put so much effort into being as fit as I can. So that's a challenge, as well as I talk about the business elements. I mean, you know, making a living in this sport
Yeah.
has always been challenging, because I mean, even nowadays, you know, that some of the younger athletes are getting paid really well. And, you know, part of what I tried to do and you know, in my career is to expand the sport so that more people could make a living doing what they love.
Hmm.
That's kind of happened.
Yeah.
But, you know, for me, like I have a list of sponsors I've worked with over the years, and it's you know, it's a really long list. I think there's 30 or 40 names on there. So it's kind of in some ways it's a churn and burn.
Yeah.
But you know, you're hot for a moment, and then a company, you know, that their marketing messaging might change, and they're on to the next person. So it's very transitory in that regard, and you're kind of, you know, you're constantly selling in a sense. I mean, you know, you've got to, the buck stops on your shoulder.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you lose a sponsorship, you're more, you know, the bank is not going to let you out of your mortgage payment.
That's for sure, right? What maybe talk a little bit about that. How did you figure that all out? Kind of, you know, because I'm sure there was no roadmap for you. You going back to the story that you tell of really how this became a life for you in the inside of your first book to, you know, to today and where you're at. And one of the conversations that you had or experiences that you had was with a rep from a company that you had lunch with, right? And that experience and how that went for you. But yeah, how did you figure that out and to create that life for yourself?
Yeah, you know, I've got to be honest. I looked outside of the running world to other athletes that have, I think, built quite an empire in their sports. Like there's a guy named Laird Hamilton.
Yeah.
Who's a big wave surfer, and you know, prior to that, you only made a living surfing in contests. But a lot of the contests were held in, you know, population centers where the waves really sucked.
Right.
And like, I don't want to go ride a 2-foot wave that's, you know, it's totally undesirable. It's blown out. It's not a great wave at all. Like, all I want to do is ride the biggest, heaviest, gnarliest waves on earth. And he figured out how to make a living doing that, which I thought was really impressive. So I looked at him. There's a guy named Conrad Anker, who's a climber. Like, in the climbing circles, Conrad is, you know, he's like the legend of legends.
Yeah.
And so I looked to him because, I mean, prior to Conrad, you know, climbers, you know, you climbed a mountain just for your satisfaction, but you never got paid for it. So he figured out a way to do that. There's a guy named Tony Hawk, who's a skateboarder.
Right.
You know, prior to that, skating was just, you know, kind of a grungy thing you did. And he figured out how to make a, you know, career out of it. So I modeled kind of what I did on those guys, and that's how I did it.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And very, very recognizable names, definitely, but sports that were a bit on the fringes, definitely, which is absolutely what ultra running is for many as well. Is it humbling to see where the sport has grown and to know that you've played a good part in helping that grow?
Yeah, I mean, it's satisfying to me. And, you know, to go to a race and have people say things like, wow, you know, I'm here because of you.
Yeah.
You know, that there's an internal reward with that's unmeasurable.
Yeah.
You know, it brings me a lot of joy when I get, and I've gotten you know, tens of thousands of messages, and some of them are just like, you know, wow, you changed my life.
Yeah.
And when someone says that to me, it's like the greatest honor ever.
Yeah.
And you know, nowadays they probably kick my ass on the race course too.
As they're passing you.
Thanks, old man. That was fun. Yeah, thanks for getting me into it. I'll see you at the finish festival.
Yeah. That's good. It's good that you can laugh about it too. But yeah, I can't imagine. I can only imagine that feels amazing to know that you've had a part in that. The Western states that you talk about coming back to do that, and you know, we'll let the readers hopefully that check this book out again, A Runner's High, My Love for Motion by Dean Karnazes. But just the fact that you got into the race, right? Because it was by no means a given that you were going to get entry. And you talk about it like before in the early days, like no one really knew about it and it wasn't an issue. And then as you were super competitive and doing well, then you always had a spot. But as time goes on and the races exploded, and they can only, but the number of people that they can allow to enter is very low. Just the fact that you're able to get into that, and then really going through that journey of, you know, because I would think of someone like yourself or someone else might think and think that, man, these guys that we've heard of that are in this sport, that are in this game, and you know, that you just don't think that they have the same experience as maybe someone like myself who is a mere novice when it comes to ultra running, but to see the experience that you had and how well you were able to detail it, and how much of a struggle it was for you, just like it is for everyone else, and putting that into words, it was something that I could definitely relate to. But what was it like, that experience going through it? You know, your son came and was able to help you through that, and did amazing, and in true 21-year-old fashion, you know, you wanted to talk about it and game plan it, and get everything ready, and your son was like, hey, I got this, and being a bit concerned about it, and then to see that he was able to really step up, and it was a powerful moment for you guys in that experience as well. Maybe talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, I think you'd agree that like a 100-mile foot race is kind of a microcosm of life itself. I mean, you have just a whole host of experiences along the way. You know, some are good, some are not so good. And, you know, there's a lot of learning that takes place when you do something like this. And one of the elements I wrote about is my son, Nicholas, who, you know, we've been pretty close, but he went off to college, and, you know, he was in a different state, and, you know, we didn't communicate that often. And, you know, he was back for the summer, and, you know, he was kind of tracking on me, you know, doing Western states. And he just kind of one day on a whim said, yeah, I want to crew for you. And you know how important crew is, you know, they're kind of your lifeline.
Right.
And so I thought, wow, this is going to be a test, because he doesn't seem like a very responsible kid to me.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. He said, Dad, we don't need to talk about it. Like, I know what to do. And I'm Nick, the last time you crewed for me, you were 10 years old. You know? Someone handed you a squirt bottle and said, you know, spray your dad off when he comes in. Hi, like, you didn't do anything. And he's like, I've got this. And so I just kind of gave myself up to it. And he proved himself to be way more responsible than I ever, you know, I saw a certain side of him that I'd never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he really did a good job. And he was very, very detail oriented. And it was a really a beautiful experience for me to see this and learn about my son.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Can imagine. Maybe talk a little bit about just the continuation of the journey that you're on. Obviously, I don't think this will be the last book we'll ever see from you, and it's definitely not the last race that you're going to run, like you said. I think that's a question that a lot of people will ask, you know, even me, like, oh man, you've ran 100 miles. Like, what's next? You're going to run 200? You're going to, you know, it's like you always got to top it. And that mentality, in a way, is kind of true too. It's a lot of times can be what's next. But for someone like you, you've done some really crazy, incredible things. In the book, you talk about the Silk Road run that you did. But how do you continue to determine what's next for you, and what that next race is going to be, and continue to change and evolve inside of the goals that you have for yourself, to stay inside of this sport as well as an ambassador? How do you handle that question, and from others and for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as a writer, you know, in author circles, is saying you're only as good as your next book.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, already people are saying, "Oh, when's your next book coming out?" I'm like, "Gee, I just published my."
Right.
And almost every interview I do with like non-running media, you know, their final question is, "So what's next for you?" You know, everyone wants to know what you're doing next, and they're always looking for you to kind of top what you've done.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, I mean, I've run on all 7 continents twice now. You know, I've run 50 marathons in 50 US states in 50 consecutive days. You know, I've done so much. It's hard to kind of shock someone with, oh, well, this is what I'm going to do now.
Yeah.
But it does look like in August, hopefully, I'm going to run across Australia. So I've never done that before. I used to live in Australia, and I've done some long runs in Australia, but this would be across Australia. And you know, there are, someone reminded me, there's 10 varieties of snakes and 8 varieties of spiders that will kill a man in under a minute.
Oh man.
That's gonna be a new challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. What are you doing that with anyone else?
Yeah, there's an ultra marathoner from Australia named Pat Farmer.
Okay.
Good guy, and he's done. I mean, he should be a household name, because the things he's done, like, he's the only guy who's ever run. He ran from the North Pole to the South Pole.
Wow. I've heard that name. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's
That's
And he's a politician, so he's a character.
okay.
He's a
Okay.
real character, yeah. And we're about the same. He's a little bit older than me, but we're pretty much the same age, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's and that'll happen this summer, you said.
August, hopefully. Yep.
Okay, coming up fast. So
I mean, yeah, and to your point, you're going to do the Denali 135, hopefully.
yeah,
I mean, you're going to run across Australia in August, hopefully.
Yeah.
We're working with the Australian government and the U.S. State Department, and right now it looks like we're going to be able to pull it off. But it's still, if there's a variant or something that emerges, or if there are other hotspots that pop up, who knows what's going to happen.
that reminds me of a story from the book when you're trying to get from one country to another, right? On the Silk Road, and they weren't letting you through.
That was dicey. All border crossings are dicey, but when you're on foot, and
Yeah.
it's the border between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan.
I can't imagine the things going through your head. Like, what am I going to do if they don't let me through? Like, where am I going to go? But yeah, very interesting. Definitely check out the book. What are some of the biggest things that you've taken from, a lot of times it's like, all right, what does the reader get from the book? But what did you get from this experience with this book? What are some of the things that really have stuck with you or stood out in this process of writing it, and now obviously getting it into other people's hands as well?
Nate, I've learned a lot about writing, and hopefully I'm a better writer, but I've also learned that, you live with your book. Like, it doesn't ever go away.
Yeah.
And like some of my previous books, I'll read a passage and I cringe, like, oh God,
Yeah.
no cliche. So this book, I just said, make the writing really good quality writing.
Yeah.
So it's engaging, like really, really entertain the reader. Like, it's entertainment, right? Let's make it fun. So there's some funny stories in there. It's not all super intense.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are surprised. Like, you can talk about, you can have fun during a 100-mile race. Like, there can be levity and there can be comedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that reminds me of the story at the White House, you and Michelle Obama, and her taking her shoes off and playing in the grass, and how interesting of an experience that would be.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a family photo of her with us, and she's barefoot.
I love it.
Best thing in the photo, she has no shoes on. Yeah.
Yeah. I had the honor of having Stephen Pressfield on the show, and to your point, he talked a lot about that. The great author, of course, and I love how he writes, and he said some similar things when I asked him a similar question with the writing, and so yeah, very important.
That's so wonderful to hear, because I mean, he's a guy I admire so much as a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. Me as well. So what as we start to wrap this up, where do you see yourself, I don't know, 5 to 10 years from now as you continue down this path and this journey? Because I don't think that the path and the journey is going to stop for you. Like you said, it seems like you're pretty set in this path and journey, and what's important to you, and the people and the message that you've been able to help through it all along the way. What's on the horizon for you as we wrap this up for the readers?
Yeah, I think, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to take care of my body and be the best that I can at my age. And hopefully I'll continue to inspire people when they say, oh, there's that runner guy. He's 75 years old and he's still kicking it. Like, he's still going.
I love it.
I mean, I've run about 300 marathons. I hope to run another 300 marathons and a shitload more ultras. So
yeah,
I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. And you'll see me there. I'll be at the back of the pack, and I'll be falling apart, but I'll still cross that finish line.
Well, you could say hi to me. So appreciate you taking time and being here. Definitely grab Dean's book. I'm sure you can get it on his website, which we'll have linked up. Obviously also Amazon, and probably just about anywhere else that sells books. I believe I got mine from Amazon. So go check it out, grab it. And also check out the rest of his books. Extremely entertaining and inspiring. I didn't go out and run a marathon or an ultramarathon after reading the first book, but it something clicked in my head that put that in my mind that someday I would, and I eventually did. So thank you. I guess I get to add that list of thanking you for inspiring me to do the same. So appreciate you being here.
I'm glad you still like me, Nate.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Have a great day.
Okay, you too, brother. Be well.